Meetup. A great place to meet people around your city. People with similar interests, close age groups, men and women. But because anyone can join, sometimes you'll meet some people that are pretty weird. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and let's listen to 3 stories where you may wish to never meet up again. Why I no longer attend meetup groups. I'll be honest, this probably won't come across as scary as some of the other stories in here, but I'm sharing it anyways because it was unsettling. I used to attend a monthly writers meeting here. I found the group on the meetup.com website. It was nice to communicate with fellow writers for a few hours once a month. Well, as often as I could attend, really. We would start each meeting by going around the room and stating our names, our genre, and any published works we had out there. Then there was usually a sort of teaching of some kind. We'd gather in small groups for writing exercises. The last meeting I attended was no different. At the end, I packed up my stuff and walked out the library, where the meetings were held. I have mild social anxiety, so I'm never one to hang around after things wrap up. I applaud myself for just attending these kinds of things. Anyways, on this particular day, a man walked with me out to the parking lot. He asked pretty typical questions. What are you working on right now? And what I did for a living. Something about it was unsettling, but I couldn't put a finger on it. He hadn't said anything weird or made a move to touch me or anything like that, but my alarm bells were ringing. I chalked it up to my social anxiety and drove home. A couple months went by. I hadn't attended the last few meetings. No big deal, I'm not obligated. One morning I woke up to a message in my Facebook other file, indicating that I'm not friends with the person who sent it. That simply said, "How's the writing coming along?" I'm in a few writers group on Facebook, so I assumed it was my admin checking in on an inactive member, so I brushed it off. Again, something nagged at me the rest of the day. Something about the message wasn't right. I checked it again and clicked through to the profile. Yep, that guy I talked to leaving the meeting. The man I never given my name to. I use a nickname at meetings because mine is longer. The man I never gone his name to. I frantically checked my Meetup page to discover that I linked it with my LinkedIn, which of course had my full name. So this guy had to click through to LinkedIn, find my name, and then seek me out on Facebook. I deleted my LinkedIn account and scrubbed my Meetup until it was as private as I could make it. I went back to Facebook and blocked him. A few days later, I got the following message in my Meetup messages folder. Just when you think you know someone, you really don't know them at all. I'm a writer. My girlfriend is a writer. Even my mother is attempting to write a memoir. I reached out to you on a friendship level, possibly a writing buddy level, but you chose otherwise. Don't worry, I will not write to you anymore, and please, when I see you at a writing group, do not act like we're best buddies because I will not respond. Let me tell you again, I had a 2-minute conversation with this guy as we left the meeting. I never seen him before then. I never spoken to him outside of that window of time. We weren't buddies. I didn't even know his name. I checked all the writers groups that weren't solely women writers that I was a member of to discover that he was a member as well. Even groups where he'd have to travel 3 hours to attend, he had membership on the site. It's been nearly a year. I haven't attended any of the meetings since. Nicotine and leather fetishes Facebook stalker. Okay, so this all happened a few years ago and only stopped about 4 months ago. And I feel like enough time has passed to justify talking about it, considering the depths this guy went to trying to get a hold of me. It all started around late 2013, when I attended these sad, if not somewhat fun meetups that were organized through Tumblr and the like, where teenagers aged 13 to 19 would meet up and smoke and drink and just generally be social as hell. Everyone would wear awesome clothes, and considering I grew up in Bryn, there would often be a range of cultures and underground fashion type cliques and groups there, like punks and stuff like that. It all went well, and between squat raves and these meetups, my young bored self was pretty content. I briefly ran away from home during this time and stayed either in my grandparents' flat or on a random sofa somewhere, or just walked around London all night, which gave rise to other creepy encounters I'll talk about sometime. Generally speaking, I'm a pretty intimidating looking guy. I'm 6'4", and had most of my hair shaved off into a mohawk at the time when all of this took place. Anyways, one day, when I was at one of these meetups, my friend handed me a bottle of homemade booze and told me to come and say hello to his friend. Generally speaking, I'm pretty social, so this was okay. So I wander over. To my 16-year-old surprise, this guy was much older, about 22, 23, and he had a totally shaved head and this kind of deadly black rubbed out stain under both of his eyes. We get talking for a while and he told me his name, and that he worked closely with the BBC. We ended up talking about the media industry and where the best places to go for media work would be. And I generally feel like my first impression of him were wrong. So after about 15 to 20 minutes of casual conversation and weird Russian cigarettes, we all decided to go chill in the Mackey's next door, wherein I take out my diary and make a note of how I feel and what I'm doing. Note, I'm keeping a diary for some reason at this point in my life, probably some stupid teenage thing I don't remember why really. So anyways, I get out and he zones in on it like, "What is that? Do you write? Can I read it?" And I very uncomfortably let him flick through. He then said something about how he felt we had a communicative connection and gave me this look like he'd found some kind of gold mine. Needless to say, I whisked the book back off of him and sat next to my friend for the rest of the meal. Before I could leave though, I stupidly agreed to exchange Facebooks. Hey, I thought, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? My friend vouches for him and says he's cool, so I see no issue here. Later that night, I find a stranger to give me some cigarettes, and then I wander home and don't think about it for another 2 months. This is when it gets truly weird. He likes every single one of my photos on Facebook and messages me to say how rare it is to meet someone so beautiful. I don't know how to respond, but I didn't assume he was talking about how I looked and was just trying to say something about how I behaved or my personality or something, which even then I found pretty excessive. After a while, he starts making small talk and hinting here and there that he's into kink, which, considering I'm already uncomfortable around him, makes me even more Then, one day, he messages me out of the blue to tell me all about his fetishes and how he wants to tie me up in a leather coffin suit and piss on me. Suddenly, alarm bells and sirens and red flags and everything just goes off at once. But I try to give it as much benefit of the doubt as one can and brush it off. I tell him I'm not really interested, and this seems to put him into a really shitty mood. I forgot to mention that I Skype a lot, so if I talk to people online, it's usually through Skype. One time when I was Skyping this man, he was telling me that he was at home at his apartment after a huge party, which seemed pretty normal for a 23-year-old. But then he started having an off-camera conversation with his mother, which didn't seem to match up with his supposed media high life. Anyways, I stopped Skyping him after the piss and leather incident, but he keeps messaging me a lot, almost to the point that, without replying at all, I'm getting 20 to 30 random messages a day, asking me all kinds of questions about where I live and what I do. One day he reveals to me that he has written something about me, which I'm surprised by, so I actually read it. It's a 3-page long, detailed description of me sitting at a cafe and smoking a cigarette that previous morning, with a bunch of random sexualized content attached to it. Normally I'd just brush it off, but it was about me at a cafe in London that he obviously waited at for me, just so he could watch me. At this, I decided that enough is enough, and to get him off of all my social media. My friend got a hold of me a few weeks later to tell me he's been writing a blog about me, with detailed sexual fantasies involving bodily affluence and various forms of restraint. I've since had all lines of communication blocked and ensured that even if he wanted to, he couldn't communicate with me or know where I was. His friend also gave him the yelling of a lifetime and basically taught him about the concept of stalking and why his behavior was fucked up. Anyways, it's not really that interesting, but this man, the creepy leather guy who wanted to burn my ass ring with lit cigarettes, let's not meet. Birth amnesia. This happened to me a week ago today, so it's probably fate that I happened to find this subreddit today. I'll try to keep it brief, but it's still going to be a long post and hopefully worth it. Enjoy. I just turned 21 not too long ago, and I've been looking for gay clubs in the area to go to. One that my friend suggested that's not too far is in a city with a bad reputation, but the bar itself is quite nice. For that reason, I didn't want to go alone, and finding girls who would be willing to go along is quite difficult. So when my meetup group posted that they would be meeting there, I signed up, excited to go. I hadn't realized that I'd been in this part of town before until I drove past the club, when I noticed that I had been to a goth club literally 5 doors down from the club I was going to that night. Not seeing a place to park, I parked a couple blocks down in a paid parking lot, with only one guy in a reflective vest guarding. As I walked to the club, I noticed that there was a parking structure literally right behind it, but I was too lazy to walk all the way back to my car to park it there. I told myself it would be fine, and anyways, I didn't want to spend any extra money just to park my car someplace else. By the end of the night, I only met one girl from the meetup. I come to find everyone else showed up, but neither of us could find them, so we spent the night talking and having fun. Around 9:30, I told her that I should be getting back to my car, and she agreed to walk me back. For some reason, the subject of how to properly stab someone came up, and as we were talking about that, I noticed the guy from the corner of my eye across the street, who noticed us and walked over to catch up. He hitchhiked onto our conversation, which he turned into being whatever he wanted it to be, and followed us to said parking lot. It was at this point I told her that she didn't have to walk me any further, and we parted ways, but the man kept following and talking to me. Now, for some backstory. I was abused as a kid, and as a result, I had a lot of difficulty saying no to people. It took years of being exploited by others to finally grow a set. Over time, I found my voice and make my boundaries very clear. However, something about this guy took my voice away again. I've always been someone searching for knowledge, and this guy was trying to entice me with the apple, so to speak. He talked about concepts about human nature, Adam and Eve, about how we were all angels with knowledge of other planes, but we are all subject to birth amnesia. And if I just gave him 30 minutes of my time to go someplace down the street and have a beer with him, everything would make sense. As he gestured to the direction of the bar, it was pretty dark, not someplace I'd want to go alone, let alone with a stranger. I kept trying to tell him no, that I couldn't get a beer because I had to drive, that I'm tired and socially drained and need to be alone, that my mother would kill me if she found out I was out at a gay club, etc., etc. But he kept interrupting me when he heard me formulating a no. I can't even describe the conversation properly because I was partly in a panic. Then he started experimenting with me by moving closer to me and judging my reaction, then moving farther away, pointing out how I got more defensive when he came closer. pointing out my facial expressions when I would react to something he said. He told me that he worked with Bill O'Reilly and Glenn Beck before, that he made a documentary on the local nuclear power plant, and that he was from Arizona and that his mobile home was just down the street. Then, he started to get creepier. At this point, I was pocket texting my male friends, telling them to call me ASAP. I need help, hoping that hearing a male voice over the phone might make him back off. He asked me to give him 30 minutes of my time, and that if I found him creepy after that, I could call the police or whatever, that I was attractive and he wouldn't mind going to bed with me, and that it totally wasn't about that and he just wanted to talk. At one point, he even convinced himself that my facial expressions were positive whenever he talked about the idea of going to bed. He offered that I could study him psychologically as we talked, because he could tell I was interested with what was going on inside his head. Or we would go down to Starbucks, and I can eat a fruit cup, but I definitely should eat something. And for some reason, the part that creeped me out the most was his long black jacket, which had white stains all over it, which he tried to offer me on multiple occasions. All I could think about was cum stains. Now all of you are probably thinking, what are you doing? Run for your life. All of my insides were screaming that this guy is clearly a creeper and I need to get out of here. But I also knew I couldn't just run. For one, he might be a schizophrenic who's non-violent and just really weird. He's still human after all. But the other thing was, if I ran, I got the feeling that he would try to grab me. I needed to be smart about it. As a result, I stayed there for an hour talking with him, slowly making my way to my car. He pointed out how he saw the struggle in me, the part of me who wanted to run, and the part of me who was interested in what he was saying. Maybe if I was fully socially charged, I might even have done it. It shames me to say. But at this point, I'm at the edge of a panic attack. People walk by occasionally, but none try to help. I finally am able to thank him for his time. And I get in my car, still talking to him for a few minutes, and then shut the door, lock the doors, and drive off. P.S. If anyone meets a man who calls himself Tim in a long black overcoat with white stains, I urge you to be very careful. I have his face memorized in my near photographic memory in case a murder or a rape report pops up in the area. People have told me how lucky I am to have gone away. He kept saying during the conversation that if I left without grabbing that beer with him, that I would always think back on the conversation and wonder what I missed out on. He was right on that. But I'm starting to learn because of him that some mysteries are better left unsolved.